Hello everyone and welcome to the Young and the Restless channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Monday, April 6, 2026 unfolds like a storm, quietly gathering strength. And by the time the day begins at the club, the tension between Jack and Diane is already suffocating the air. Jack approaches her with a desperation that feels almost palpable, his voice carrying the weight of regret as he begs for just a moment to explain himself, to salvage what little remains of their fractured bond. But Diane stands firm, her pain too fresh, too raw to be softened by his pleas, and she refuses to take responsibility for a downfall she believes he alone caused. To her, this isn't just a mistake, it's a betrayal that cuts deeper than words can express, made even worse by the humiliating image burned into her memory of catching him in bed with Patty. The mere thought of it still stings, twisting her emotions into something sharp and unyielding, and she cannot imagine how trust could ever be rebuilt from such ruins. Jack, weighed down by guilt, tries to reach her, but every word he offers seems to fall short, lost in the space between them that now feels impossibly wide. When Kyle walks in, the fragile moment shatters completely, and Diane, unwilling to let her vulnerability linger, sends Jack away, leaving behind a silence that speaks louder than any argument. As Jack exits, the emotional aftermath lingers, settling heavily between Diane and Kyle, who quickly realizes that this situation is far more complicated than either of them can simply ignore. He gently reminds his mother that her professional life is still intertwined with Jack's, that avoiding him entirely is not an option. But Diane insists she can maintain a level of professionalism even if her heart is anything but steady. Kyle, however, sees through that facade, sensing that the wounds run far deeper than she is willing to admit, and questions whether she can truly move past what his father has done. Diane's response is laced with frustration, not just at Jack, but at the pressure she now feels from all sides, including her own son, who she believes is asking too much of her too soon. She challenges him almost defensively, asking if he would go so far as to fire her for stepping out of line, a suggestion he immediately dismisses with sincerity. Yet the question itself reveals just how shaken she is, how unstable everything suddenly feels, and though Kyle tries to hold on to hope for his parents, Diane can only retreat inward, her pain unresolved and her future uncertain. Across town at the Chancellor Estate, a different kind of tension unfolds as Lily returns to a place filled with complicated memories, her presence met with surprise and a quiet undercurrent of unease. Devon fills her in on the latest developments surrounding Mariah's case, his tone edged with frustration as he explains the leniency of the plea deal, something that clearly doesn't sit right with him. To Devon, it feels like justice has been softened by clever legal maneuvering, leaving behind a sense that accountability has been compromised. While he acknowledges that Mariah needs treatment, he cannot shake the belief that what she's facing isn't nearly enough to reflect the severity of her actions, especially given how much she has changed. Lily listens carefully, trying to temper his anger, urging him to let go of some of that bitterness before it consumes him. But when she asks for more details about the abduction, Devon's demeanor shifts. His defensiveness surfaces quickly, revealing wounds that haven't fully healed, and he recounts how they initially thought Dominic's disappearance was just a harmless game, a misunderstanding that spiraled into something far more terrifying. Lily gently encourages him not to shoulder blame, reminding him of the trauma he and Abby endured. But Devon resists that narrative entirely. He doesn't feel broken or shaken. Instead, he feels something far more volatile: anger, sharp and unwavering, directed solely at Mariah, whom he holds entirely responsible. Meanwhile, at society, Abby finds herself grappling with her own emotional turmoil, standing behind the bar as if the familiar routine might anchor her in some sense of normalcy. When Daniel approaches, their conversation quickly turns to Mariah, a subject neither of them can escape, and Abby seeks answers she isn't sure even exist. She wonders what will happen once Mariah completes treatment, what the future holds for someone who has caused so much pain, but Daniel admits he doesn't have those answers. As they reflect on how well Dominic has managed to cope, Abby's composure begins to falter, and she confesses that she isn't handling things nearly as well as her son. Fear lingers in her mind, persistent and unrelenting, and she questions whether treatment alone is enough to address what has been done. Daniel offers a perspective rooted in empathy, reminding her of the immense trauma Mariah has endured, suggesting that her actions, however unforgivable, were driven by deep emotional pain. Abby understands that logic. She truly does. But understanding doesn't quiet the fear or ease the sense that justice still hasn't been fully served, and she remains caught between compassion and the need for accountability. At Crimson Lights, the atmosphere shifts into something more strategic and quietly dangerous as Kane presents Holden with an offer that feels less like an opportunity and more like a moral dilemma. He wants Holden to act as a weapon against Victor, to use his connection with Claire to gather information, a request that immediately unsettles him. The idea of exploiting a personal relationship for such a purpose doesn't sit right, and his hesitation is clear enough for Kane to recognize that he's pushing too far. Rather than forcing the issue, Kane abruptly decides there's nothing more to discuss, walking away with a cold finality that leaves Holden conflicted. Yet, something pulls Holden after him, perhaps curiosity or a lingering sense of obligation. But Kane has already shifted his approach, acknowledging that he'll have to find another way to challenge Victor. Before the moment can fully settle, everything changes when Lily walks in, her presence freezing Kane in place for just a second too long, betraying emotions he clearly doesn't want to confront. He masks it quickly, suggesting with biting distance that they should simply avoid each other altogether, even joking that they should cross the street when they meet. But the underlying tension is anything but light. Lily tries to bridge the gap, to open a conversation that feels long overdue, but Kane shuts her down completely, choosing to walk away rather than face whatever unresolved feelings still linger between them. The moment he leaves, Holden steps into the space Kane vacated, stopping Lily before she can follow, his words carrying an urgency that surprises her. He reveals how frantic Kane had been when she went missing, how deeply concerned he was, even going so far as to send Holden out to find her, a confession that seems to catch Lily off guard. What shocks him even more, however, is her calm admission that she was never truly in danger, a revelation that shifts the entire narrative and leaves behind a trail of confusion and frustration. Now, in the aftermath, she finds herself at the center of everyone's anger, misunderstood and isolated in a way she didn't anticipate. The emotional fallout is complicated, layered with miscommunication and unspoken truths. And as Holden warns her about Kane's increasingly vindictive mindset, the stakes begin to feel much higher. According to him, Kane's battle with Victor is only going to escalate, growing into something far more destructive, and he urges Lily to stay clear of the chaos before she becomes collateral damage. Back at the Abbott mansion, the weight of regret settles heavily over Jack as he confides in Tracy, his self-blame relentless and unyielding as he struggles to make sense of how everything fell apart so quickly. Tracy listens with quiet compassion, offering him reassurance that what happened with Patty was not a reflection of his true character, especially given the circumstances surrounding it. She believes wholeheartedly that he would never have made such a choice if he hadn't been under the influence. But Jack can't escape the haunting question of why he didn't resist. why some part of him failed in that critical moment. He reflects on his past, on the man he used to be, a playboy who made mistakes without thinking twice, and contrasts it with the life he has spent years trying to build, one that would make John proud. To him, this isn't just a setback. It feels like a complete collapse of everything he has worked to become. Tracy reminds him of all the good he's done, of the man he has proven himself to be time and time again. But Jack's guilt runs deeper than reassurance can reach, leaving him feeling like he's lost something far more significant than just Diane's trust. As the night stretches on, the emotional threads of the day begin to tighten across every corner of their lives. Diane, back at the club, finally allows herself to break down in front of Kyle, admitting that her anger is tangled and complex, directed not just at Patty or Victor, but most intensely at Jack himself. Tears come freely now, exhaustion overtaking her as she admits she can't keep going like this, that she needs to step away, if only for a moment, to breathe. Kyle, still holding on to hope, refuses to give up on the idea that his parents might find their way back to each other, but Diane's pain leaves little room for optimism. At Society, Abby and Devin continue to wrestle with their own sense of justice, with Abby uncertain whether a psychiatric facility is enough and Devin far more resolute in his belief that the system has failed them. His frustration turns into determination as he vows to take matters into his own hands, to hold those in power accountable for what he sees as a failure to protect the community. For him, Mariah's punishment is not just insufficient, it's unacceptable, and he makes it clear that he will not rest until he sees what he believes is true justice served. And as all these lives remain tangled in conflict, betrayal, and unresolved emotion, the day closes not with resolution, but with the quiet certainty that the consequences of these choices are only just beginning to unfold. As the night deepens and the city quiets, the emotional weight of the day refuses to fade, instead settling more heavily into the lives of everyone caught in its wake. At Crimson Lights, the echoes of Kane's cold dismissal linger long after he's gone, leaving Lily standing in a silence that feels louder than any argument they could have had. Holden's warning continues to circle in her mind, his words painting a picture of a man spiraling into something darker, something far more dangerous than she may have realized before. There was a time when she understood Kane, when she could read the layers beneath his actions, but now he feels distant, hardened by something she can't quite reach. The revelation that he had been frantic over her disappearance stirs something complicated inside her, a mixture of confusion and reluctant emotion, because it clashes so sharply with the indifference he just showed her moments ago. She is left questioning what is real, his concern, his anger, or the wall he's now built between them, and the uncertainty only deepens the growing divide. And as Holden steps back, having said his piece, Lily is left alone with the realization that whatever is coming next won't be simple, and it certainly won't be easy to escape. Across town, the Abbott mansion feels unusually heavy, as if the walls themselves are absorbing Jack's guilt and reflecting it back at him. Tracy remains by his side, her presence steady and compassionate, but even her reassurance struggles to cut through the storm raging inside him. Jack paces slowly, lost in thought, replaying every moment that led him to this point, as if somewhere in those memories he might find a way to undo it all. The idea that he didn't resist, that some part of him failed in a way he can't explain, continues to haunt him, feeding into a deeper fear that perhaps he isn't the man he believed himself to be. Tracy urges him not to let this mistake define him, reminding him that a single moment does not erase a lifetime of growth. But Jack isn't ready to accept that truth. To him, Diane's pain is proof enough of his failure, and the distance between them feels like a consequence he may never be able to repair. Still, beneath the weight of his regret, there's a flicker of determination beginning to form, fragile but present, as he clings to the hope that somehow, some way, he can still fight for what they had. At the club, Diane's composure continues to unravel in the quiet aftermath of everything that's happened. Her emotions no longer contained behind the controlled exterior she tried so hard to maintain. Sitting alone now, she replays the moment she walked in on Jack and Patty, the image refusing to fade, replaying with cruel clarity no matter how much she wishes she could forget it. Her anger burns fiercely, but beneath it lies something even more painful, a deep sense of betrayal that shakes the very foundation of everything she thought they had rebuilt together. Kai's words linger in her mind, his hope for reconciliation both comforting and frustrating, because it asks her to consider something she isn't ready to face. She knows she can't avoid Jack forever, not with their lives so intertwined, but the idea of standing in front of him again, of pretending that professionalism can mask this level of hurt, feels almost impossible. As exhaustion finally begins to overtake her, Diane makes a quiet decision to step away for the night. Not because anything is resolved, but because she simply doesn't have the strength to keep fighting these emotions any longer. And in that moment of retreat, it becomes clear that healing, if it's even possible, is going to take far more than time. Meanwhile, at society, the tension between Abby and Devon continues to simmer, refusing to settle into anything resembling peace. Abby leans against the bar, her thoughts tangled between fear for her family and a desperate need for reassurance that what happened will never happen again. Devon, however, remains anchored in his anger, his sense of justice sharpened by what he sees as a system that has failed them all. His words carry a conviction that leaves little room for compromise, as he talks about holding the judge and the district attorney accountable, determined to ensure that what he believes is a miscarriage of justice does not go unanswered. Abby listens, torn between agreeing with his frustration and recognizing the weight of what he's proposing, because the line between seeking justice and being consumed by it is thinner than either of them may want to admit. She still isn't convinced that Mariah's punishment is enough, but the idea of pushing for something harsher leaves her unsettled, caught between her compassion and her fear. Devon, on the other hand, has already made up his mind, his path forward clear and unwavering, even if it leads him into deeper conflict. And as their conversation fades into a heavy silence, it becomes evident that this is far from over, that the repercussions of Mariah's actions will continue to ripple through their lives in ways none of them can fully predict. By the time the night finally begins to draw to a close, every relationship touched by the day's events feels strained, stretched to a point where something has to give. Jack is left grappling with the possibility that he may have lost Diane for good, even as he quietly refuses to stop hoping. Diane, in turn, retreats into herself, unsure whether forgiveness is even something she can offer, no matter how much she once believed in their future. Lily walks away from Crimson Lights carrying a warning she can't ignore, aware that Kane's next move could pull her into a battle she never intended to fight. And Abby and Devon stand on opposite edges of the same emotional storm, united by their pain but divided by how to move forward from it. Nothing has been resolved, no wounds have been healed, and yet everything has changed, leaving behind a fragile, uncertain silence that feels more like the calm before something even bigger. Because in a world where emotions run this deep and conflicts cut this sharply, the end of one day is never truly an ending. It's only the beginning of what comes next. And as a new day begins to creep in, faint light pushing against the darkness of a restless night, the emotional aftermath of everything that has unfolded refuses to loosen its grip. Sleep has offered little comfort to those weighed down by regret, anger, and uncertainty. And instead of clarity, morning only brings sharper awareness of what has been lost and what still hangs unresolved. In the quiet solitude of the Abbott mansion, Jack rises with the same heaviness in his chest that followed him through the night. The silence around him echoing louder than ever without Diane's presence. Every room feels like a reminder, every familiar space now touched by absence, and the realization settles in deeper that this isn't just a temporary fracture, it may be something far more permanent. Yet, even as doubt threatens to take hold, there's a stubborn resolve building within him, a refusal to let this be the end of their story, no matter how impossible the road ahead may seem. He knows words won't be enough this time, that apologies alone can't mend what's been broken, but he also knows he can't walk away without trying. And so, caught between guilt and determination, Jack begins to prepare himself for a fight that will demand more honesty, more vulnerability than he's ever had to give before. Elsewhere, Diane greets the morning with a different kind of exhaustion, one that lingers beneath the surface, untouched by rest, as if her heart itself has grown tired from carrying so much pain. The anger that burned so brightly the night before has softened into something quieter, but no less heavy, a deep, lingering ache that refuses to be ignored. She moves through her space slowly, almost cautiously, as if any sudden motion might force her to confront emotions she's still trying to keep at bay. Jack's face, his voice, the look in his eyes when he pleaded with her, they all return in fragments she can't quite shake. And despite everything, there's a part of her that wishes things had been different. But that wish is quickly overshadowed by the memory of betrayal, of trust shattered in a way that feels almost impossible to rebuild. And she steadies herself with the reminder that some lines, once crossed, cannot simply be undone. Kyle's faith in reconciliation lingers in her thoughts, a quiet pressure she doesn't know how to respond to, because while she understands his hope, she cannot force her heart to follow it. For now, all she can do is take one step at a time, even if every step feels uncertain, even if the path forward remains painfully unclear. At the same time, Lily finds herself caught in a web of conflicting emotions that only seem to tighten the more she tries to make sense of them. The encounter with Kane replays in her mind with frustrating clarity, each moment layered with contradictions that refuse to settle into a single truth. His cold dismissal stands in stark contrast to the concern Holden described, leaving her questioning which version of him is real, or if both are, in ways she doesn't fully understand.